Hey y'all, Raz here. Wanted to go ahead and give a thoughts on essentially how people have felt with the anniversary, see what's going on, and why do people feel that the anniversary was not as good as it was. And see, I'm not going to answer the question of whether the anniversary itself was bad or not. I think the problem isn't actually whether or not if the anniversary was bad or good, but whether the fact that people can go ahead and feel about that for an anniversary that's related around the 10th anniversary of a game. Like, just to kind of clarify, a lot of people, a lot of gacha games don't really usually stand up to the test of time of lasting up to around like 10 years. Like most of the gacha games that I've known, such as like when it comes to like Dragaea Lost or like any other gacha games, usually even close within like the first 3 years of their lifespan. And then we have a gacha game like Dokkan, who is essentially prevailed since for the past 10 years. They essentially have been in the game like before the Switch was even invented, and they've been going at it strong for the past 10 years. I think a lot of people came in with a lot of expectations of why that celebration should probably be the best one and should be objectively the one that blows people's portions out of the water. And I think that it did that when it comes to like a lot of the offerings, when it comes to gifts. It did a lot of that when it came to the content. After all, people were going to obviously celebrate the fact that when it comes to Dokkan and its content of the 10th anniversary celebration, I think a lot of people can generally agree upon that it probably gives you the most diverse amount of content you can have. Because if we were to look at challenges right now, we were given like 3 different types of long content when it comes to short content, and in the form of battle hard and formidable foes. We have the medium-sized content, which was the ultimate red zone battles. And then we have the giganto big long fight that is the challenge the limits festival of battles. So when it comes to content, there was ways to make it so that way all characters that you had, such as Beast Gohan, who could shine in battle hard and formidable foes, but not shine necessarily in festival battles. You were given people a lot more choices and a lot more opportunities to use characters in different settings and be able to do that. I think a lot of people can agree upon that when it comes to content. It was probably the best one for the celebration. But is content solely just what the celebration is, and that ultimately determines the celebration? And objectively, I don't think so. I think a lot of people can say that celebrations really don't define like all of the thing when it comes to celebration. For a lot of people, and I think a lot of the reason why almost when I did this poll around for 2 months, only 14% of people, so around only like around 7 to 8 people objectively said that they thought that celebration was like the best celebration in history, whereas around 50 to 40 people were to say that it was a great celebration but has flaws. And I'm assuming that a lot of people, when it came down to the celebration, a lot of people had issues with the EZA and how characters were represented and treated when it comes to this game. And I think that's something that a lot of people can personally feel because of the fact that a lot of characters were not necessarily up to the thing. I think this is where the issue comes in, is the fact that we don't know as a community what makes a good celebration good. And I don't understand why no one in really like a lot of the content creator space for Dokkan really explain their thought process of what they think why the celebration was the best celebration there was. A lot of people will just say it in passing, and it's almost like just because they say it in passing and they have the clout to be big as a YouTuber, that people are gonna repeat those words without ever trying to understand like why that YouTuber is saying that it was the best celebration. Like if I were to go down to like a channel such as like the Truth DT, Nano, Diddy, do any of the YouTubers that you watch really explain like what made the 10th anniversary celebration really special to them? That's not really like in a form of a video. And honestly, a majority of times, no. A lot of them just kind of go through with the emotion and just basically saying that it was the best celebration, and then making it so that way people can go through. I think that there should be more conversation when it comes to like why people feel like it might not be the best celebration in the world. Why certain people may feel like it would be the best celebration in the world. There's this growing habit of where like there's almost a community herding where people just will go with bandwagon against like what the popular opinion is until someone goes ahead and changes it. For example, like a lot of people will say that Int Namagoku, who in this case was like a character that a lot of people were going to be enjoying and a lot of people celebrate because it was like Namagoku is a representation of one of the most iconic arcs in like Dragon Ball Hero in the series in general. when it comes down to like if you were to rank it. And a lot of people were upset initially when it came down to the fact that this Goku wasn't as good as they initially thought out to be until they got later on. And for a lot of people, this could be like a great reason why they don't necessarily feel like why a celebration felt good until they got to later on. Like, there can be reasons why they have certain feelings for this matter, or they can have it, but like none of the YouTubers really talk about that sense of why they feel certain celebrations are it is. In fact, it would be more interesting to see like how people feel about each celebration, how they would rank it objectively when it comes down to how they feel about the characters, the content, and more EZAs. I feel like there should be more transparency when it comes to Dokkan and being able to explain your thought process when it comes to why people feel a certain way. Like, I want to see like exactly like why certain people feel like maybe they feel like characters is like 80% of like what the value of a celebration is, then 20% is the actual like hard stages and everything like that. For example, there might be people who believe that the Broly celebration, where a lot of people like, if you could ask someone like the Shoot DT, and he would probably tell you like the Broly celebration is probably like the worst celebration in the game for him, because all the hard content wasn't that hard until that Gogeta and Janemba fight appeared. But for someone like someone else who like maybe like Diddy or like Nano, who focus more on character-based celebration content, for them they probably enjoyed it because all those characters brought new revivals, the characters were good, and they were able to have fun when it comes to like using those characters. And I think that's what we need to focus on, is essentially asking the question and sparking up in the community, what determines what makes an anniversary good? We should be like sitting there trying to figure out like as a collective, like why do we feel should be the most important factors when deciding a celebration's worth and value and determining what exactly makes them like that. Like we have, funny enough, like all these videos on like, if I were to look up like Dokkan top 10, like all the top 10s are obviously going to be like, you know, updating like the top 10 LRs, top 10 anniversary units, like top 10 best Dokkan Fest. But I don't think anyone's really talking about like, if they were to go back to it, what was the top 10 anniversaries and why did they feel that certain way? And like, if like a lot of people, if majority of people are feeling this way, we should probably be more open to like having that discussion and having that conversation. But this is how I feel when it comes to the matter, and this is how certain people are going to be noticing when it comes down to it. So now that we got that conversation out of the way, let me answer the question right now on the thumbnail. Was the Dokkan 10th anniversary bad? In my personal opinion, no. The content, 10 out of 10 for me, because the fact that it gave us multiple different variations of fights with content, length, and also how that content was structured when it comes to how hard or like special abilities. And I do think that the characters, I think the EZAs, okay, if I were to go back and look at some of the EZAs that happened during this time, I do think that the celebration for the EZAs may not be as strong to me, but that's because I have personal attachments to some of these characters. Like I do think that I wish that this Gogeta, which was supposed to be a representation of like the first anniversary Dokkan, and this Vegito, which is the first representation of Vegito in Dokkan, should have gotten a bit more love, because these are anniversary level characters who are on that level of hype. Obviously, they're not going to be expected to be on their level with these two, but I think them being on at least on that high enough level, I think should have been there. And Buhan obviously was good. Janembas were good. All the villains were good, maybe except for Frieza, which had the 50% damage reduction. I think a lot of people may have issues when it comes to that. I do think that having 3 of the characters not be as competitively viable in this meta felt weird, because at the end of the day, it became the case where basically the only 3 characters that were good to take out was this guy, and weirdly enough, just this Goku, because all of them essentially were stackable characters who essentially did a lot of damage. And then Vegeta wasn't as good because he was supposed to be your leader character, who necessarily didn't have too much defense-wise when it comes to like before getting attacked. Frieza wasn't good on his first appearance, and Gohan himself is the physical Gohan. You know, he is a solid A, but like in a game where like, you know, in a gacha game, if you're not like, you know, competitively like best character who's like stacked up, you tend to age almost like instantly and rapidly. And this is the problem with this Gohan, is that he's not very like, he doesn't have the longevity that you would think he would have when it comes to this game. I wish he had more longevity, that way he'd probably be a more useful option when it comes to like the battles. Maybe a bit more defense maybe, but like, I wish that, you know, like 3 out of 6 characters, in my opinion, should have been more buffed up and be a lot more viable, and should have been a lot more capable. I do think Namek Goku and Agio Frieza, I think they're good characters. I just kind of wish that these two were a bit more, how you can say, like, like, I think the Namek and Saiyan Saga were kind of shafted in this event, because right now, these are 2 iconic Z sagas that were not given enough representation and love when it comes to like the series, which is weird because these are the 2 that people are most fond of. I feel like these 2 should have been like the ones that have gotten like the most amount of buffs, the benefits, and the details when it came down to like that celebration. Same thing with LR Int Gohan, and also with the Texel LR Int Gohan, especially because he's technically the first, technically the first Japan LR, because I think that Global got Broly first. And I think a lot of people can also agree that like Daima Vegeta wasn't as good as like initially speaking when it comes to like other fights. Like longer fights, he's not as respectfully viable due to the fact that he's very conditionally what if. And so a lot of people, you know, like have, you know, struggle with him when it comes to getting his like a defense up, making sure that he has enough to tank. I feel especially bad for like people who are Vegeta fans, because like not a great selection of standalone Vegetas are necessarily that great. Like this wasn't, he's not, you know, as competitively viable in the top 10. He can get caught easily in battle-hardened formidable foes. So a lot of people were actually striking him down on Twitter, but I don't know how to take that responsibility because it's Twitter. A lot of people like Tech Vegeta, but like Tech Vegeta is not viable. I think, well, he's actually phenomenal. Like he's like the phenomenal edge case. But then like when it comes to this guy and this guy specifically, like a lot of people are having issues when it comes to these 2, and this guy is just like on his level. So with like 2 out of like, what is that, like 6 Vegetas were considered to be essentially phenomenal when it comes down to the content right now, which I don't think I think a lot of Vegeta fans are probably upset at the fact that 6, you know, out of 6 Vegetas, 2 of them were essentially like really like people enjoyed playing with and enjoyed having the content with. I think that's one of the issues when it comes down to what the celebration was, is that I think it should have focused on the fact that characters should have been at least like really fun to enjoy, or really fun to play with. I think that's what like a big strive should be when it comes down in your 10th anniversary of a gacha game, is that you should shift from whether they're being competitively viable as for a summoning option to like a more fun strategy. Like there's not, like this I think is the biggest offender. I think Kaioken Goku is unfortunately the biggest offender of this, because like he is like only the representation for Saiyan Saga, and Saiyan Saga as as a series does not get represented as like enough as it is. So like if you're gonna shaft the only character who essentially is on a premium character in this saga, who that rarely gets buff, like you're kind of just almost forcing yourself against a wall when it comes down to like ever running this team. I think it should have been like, you know, he should have been more better, so that way he can be more of a lead, and that way Saiyan Saga could be at least be a tiny bit viable, and not like a total issue when it comes down to like with free-to-play players and also with doing the thing. I think the same thing also occurs with Namek, because I feel like Namek should be like a bigger buff to these. This guy should be a bigger buff to the being anniversary, but it seems like Dokkan really wanted to focus on being afraid of essentially people not choosing the summon when people are going to summon anyway, because now they realize that Vegeta and Goku, or Vegeta and Gogeta in this case, the LR ones, were needed when it comes to the content. I don't know. I think this is how I feel right now. Like I personally, I'm still before this poll was taken before like festival battles, but I've kept it up and allowed people to vote ever since then. And I still give it personally like the celebration an 8 when it comes to like my own personal feelings when it comes to it. And I think it's pretty much a great celebration, but it definitely does wear its flaws on its color in comparison to like I think like the 9th anniversary, where the 9th anniversary, the only issue I had in that regard was that the only thing I had in that regard was that the gammas were not as great as they should be, and I think like some of the content was lackluster when it comes to the free to play characters. But I don't think that's really a big issue in that regard, because I didn't compare free to play to free to play. But yeah, this is how I feel about the celebrations, and I feel like we as a community should be more open to discussion of like what is the top 10 like anniversaries that have happened, how do people feel about them, and how people are relating to that. But yeah, that's what I feel about it, and that's how I think about the video. Whatever you guys feel, let me know in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe and like if you enjoy the content. And let me know what you guys think, and let me know on Twitter as well. You can ping me at Razora as well. I'm on Twitter as well, and I'll see you all later. Peace.